And who do I have? Margareth Ndomondo-Sigonda. Did I get that right?
Yes.
I got that right. And Chimwemwe. Chamdimba. No, it wasn't written right. I'm sure I mispronounced it. How is it pronounced?
Oh, it is Chimwemwe Chamdimba.
Chimwemwe Chamdimba.
Yes.
Are you Zimbabwean?
I'm Malawian.
Malawian?
Yes.
Close enough. So, Chimwemwe is the principal policy specialist of NePAD agency, and Margareth is the head of health programs NePAD agency. Welcome to the Citi Breakfast Show on a Friday morning.
Thank you.
I'm sure whatever you're organizing must be very important for me to pull you from your comfort zone to come and sit in front of me. All right, so first, tell me, Margareth, what's the NePAD agency? What do you people do?
So, NePAD agency, actually NePAD stands for New Partnership for Africa's Development, which is basically a technical agency of the African Union, which has been established to facilitate socio-economic development agenda for the continent. Yeah, and so it was initiated way back in 2001, and in 2010 it was integrated into the African Union structures, and now we are an agency facilitating development agenda for
fully fledged NePAD agency.
Yes.
What's the third Biennial Scientific Conference about?
So the third Biennial Scientific Conference on Medical Products Regulation in Africa is basically a forum that has been established since 2013 to bring together policymakers, regulators, scientists, the industry, civil society, and all the various stakeholders in the pharmaceutical sector development, in order to come together and discuss issues of common interest when it comes to promoting and developing the sector on the continent.
And what is the aim of this year's conference?
So basically, this year's conference is aiming at really trying to look into the progress that we've made in the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative that was started way back in 2009. So we are close to 10 years since the initiation of this process, and we are coming together to really reflect on the progress that we've made so far in harmonizing regulation of medical products on the continent, and to see how far have gone and if there are any problems that we have faced so far in the implementation of this initiative between the African Union member states and regional economic communities, and so that we are able to now identify those gaps and be able to determine what should be the future moving forward.
Why is it important to be talking about harmonizing medicine regulation in Africa at this time? Why is it important?
So the reason we are focusing on harmonizing medicines regulation in Africa is due to the fact that we have a situation on the continent where you see circulation of substandard and falsified medical products that are causing public health, risk. And so we also have a situation where most of the African countries also do not have the relevant capacity to be able to regulate medical products. And as you may be aware, medical products are highly regulated, products. You cannot just use them as you do with any other commodities. And so the problem is that most of the African countries, they don't have proper legal framework, they don't have the capacity in terms of financial resources, in terms of human resources to actually regulate the products. So we actually had to come up with this initiative as a way of trying to assist countries to first and foremost streamline the regulatory requirements so that it becomes easier for the industry to sell the products, to market the products in the various countries on the continent. And we work through the regional economic communities so that countries come together through a platform where they can facilitate faster approval of such products so that in the end the patients can have access to such medicines.
I'm told the theme for this year is sustaining the momentum for medicine regulation in Africa. Tell me a couple of things you think are vital to achieving this.
So for us to be able to sustain the momentum, first and foremost, as I said before, we want to see how far have we gone in terms of harmonizing registration requirements for marketing authorization of medical products on the continent. And as I said, we've been working with the regional economic communities. We started in East African community. We have actually also initiated a project in the West African economic community. This is the ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. But also we have done some work in the Southern African Development Community, and we are reaching out to the rest of the regional blocks so that in the end we're able to scale up across the continent. And so the reason why we think it's important to now reflect on this is because we have been able to see some progress, especially in the work that we have done in East Africa, West Africa, and Southern Africa. But now it's time for us to look into how best can we not only learn from the lessons learned from the initiative that we have embarked on this in the three regions, but also look into how we can now expand the scope of this initiative, because the initial focus was on marketing authorization, but now we want to look into how can we now consider issues such as the safety surveillance. How can we monitor the safety of medicines that are circulating in the market? How can we also look into how to approve, for example, clinical development of medical products, through the clinical trials that are being conducted, because we know Africa is unique. It has its own demographics and epidemiological space. And so we want to get to a point where we are able to now focus on the diseases that are affecting Africa in a meaningful way, that regulators now can contribute to address, development and approval of clinical trials for diseases such as malaria, TB, and HIV. So we are at that stage of really advancing the regulatory harmonization agenda in a way that is really making an impact to the African people.
Are we winning? After 10 years of medicine regulation in Africa, has there been success?
I would say yes. Because we've seen progress, for example, in terms of shortening the time it takes for placing products on the market in the East African community, in the Southern African Development Community, and based on that, success, we think that it's time to now scale up and also cover other aspects, as I said before.
97.3 Citi FM, we're talking to two officials of the NePAD agency ahead of the third Biennial Scientific Conference on Medical Product Regulation in Africa. Margareth Ndomondo-Sigonda and Chimwemwe Chamdimba. You haven't said much, Chimwemwe, since we started the interview. Tell us, we understand there's the African Medicines Agency that is going to be established, has been proposed. How is it going to work?
Well, thank you very much. Actually, the African Medicines Agency is meant to, I think you asked the question about sustaining regulatory harmonization in Africa. We have started with, I think as Margaret said, looking at the capacity of the continent to be able to regulate medical products so that they are of good quality, and when people of Africa are consuming, they have confidence in their systems. And as she also said, there are different capacities when it comes to regulating medical products in Africa, in the different countries. And the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative, which we have been implementing for the past 10 years, has been a program within the African Union structures. And looking beyond, we are thinking about sustainability of some of these things that we have been doing, the regulation within the harmonization within the regional economic communities. How then do we ensure that it's sustainable, and African governments commit to ensure that we still continue with working together as a continent in regulating medical products. But I think one thing that we also need to emphasize is the fact that as Africa, we are moving into ensuring that we also are able to produce pharmaceuticals in the continent. As you may be, some of the people may be aware, the African Union adopted the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Plan for Africa, the PMPA, which is meant to spearhead local production of medical products in Africa. But for us to be able to do that, we need to have a regulatory system that will ensure that we are able to produce quality products that our people in Africa have confidence in consuming, as well as we also can market or sell them outside the continent, thereby boosting our economies. So the African Medicines Agency ultimately is meant to sustain regulatory harmonization capacity on the continent. Harmonization that we have started it through the AMRH, the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative. So the African Medicines Agency, currently what we're doing is that we are developing the treaty or the statutes, which we have been consulting with member states as African Union member states, so that they adopt it, and ultimately they commit to supporting and working together as a continent in ensuring that we continue with strengthening the capacities in regulating medical products on the continent. So that's the African Medicines Agency, and it's going to be a continental body where countries will, it's assumed that I think countries will sign to the treaty of establishing the African Medicines Agency, meaning that they will be part of the African Medicines Agency, and it will support strengthening capacity in the member states as well as harmonizing in the regional economic communities, more of sustaining what the African Medicines Regulatory Harmonization Initiative started.
So when is this conference? Where is it happening? Is it open to the public, or is it only delegates? Give us some quick details about this.
So the conference is starting on Monday, next Monday. It is a 2 days conference. The first part of the conference, mainly as Margaret said, brings together scientists, academia, as well as regulators to discuss issues relating to regulation of medical products. So this part, it is open to the public. It's going to happen at Alisa Hotel. Yes, at Alisa Hotel. So this part of the conference, if the public would like to come and just listen, it is open to the public. But beyond this, there are also a number of activities that will be convening, which mainly is the regulators conference, and this one is closed, where the regulators now debate as to, or discuss as to, what the contributions from the scientific conference will inform their work moving forward. But I think also to indicate that though we are saying it is open to the public, there are international delegates that are coming from other countries in Africa and beyond. And we also have, I think, people from Ghana, especially the regulators and the scientists from Ghana that will be part of the conference. So the public that feels there is something relevant being discussed, and there are certain sections that they would like to listen to or to be part of, it is open to those people who would like to come and listen.
Fantastic, thank you. Sounds like a great initiative for the African continent to improve the quality of medicines we have. So keep it up. Margareth Ndomondo-Sigonda is the head of health programs at NePAD agency. Chimwemwe Chamdimba is also from the NePAD agency, and she is the principal policy specialist. So Monday is a big day for the conference, as you heard. There are certain portions that the public is invited. Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. It's 10:15. I have more coming up on the show. Your messages coming in thick and fast on all the things we've been talking about. One of the districts in the district league table, they didn't do too well. We'll be asking them how come. They have an event this weekend as well. We'll be talking about. This is 97.3 Citi FM. Don't go away.
This is the Citi Breakfast Show. The city's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my Nigerian Christina.
Two gods in her name.
Southern African Nigerian.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Regards to Zoom Zoom.
Please go by yourself. With Mugabe and all that. Sorry. Sometimes you start your should be jealous of you.